Okay, thank you very much, Christian, for taking your time for this interview. But the first one is in the 90s, there was craze products, as you call it yourself, such as slicers and roboriders. How much were you actually involved with them because I heard before you actually pitched the first thing, the first pitch for the creatures, I think what's it called, Cybots, it was for the buildings.
Yeah, it was actually way before that, because all the way through the 90s we had this feeling that Lego, we constantly got different messages from Lego about crisis, about trouble on the horizon, because there were so many things threatening the Lego the Lego way of playing. Kids got less and less time. There was more and more cheap products coming from China. There was the whole gaming industry appearing and taking a lot of time, and generally there was just much less time to sort of go into building process that took a lot of hours, which is sort of the place where you get into flow with Lego. So that whole thing about how Lego actually worked before that was challenged. So we were constantly sort of asked, how could you improve this? How could you actually get into a category where Lego was a craze product? Because we saw all these different toys that just came and went again, but they came into the schoolyard, they became hot topic, and there was a lot of collecting in there, and of course the games, they took their own part of that, and all that mixed together. Basically, I had Lego Technic as my line as an art director, and I would sort of take some Lego Technic bricks, and then I would sort of make this thought that what if we build characters instead of building cars and structures. So imagining if you could build a character, you could have the storytelling and the play straight ahead. In the other case, you would need to build like a police station and a police car, and you had a minifig in there. If you only concentrated on building the characters, you could go straight into role playing, and you could go straight into character building. So that was why we started out trying to build characters out of Lego Technic bricks instead of the cars and the whole sort of scenery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually heard there was it was a brick by brick book, and it said that one of the inspirations was I think it was a manga where big robot battles from there, and like I don't know, maybe the Transformers, like that was like what Lego wanted out of those characters.
I would actually say that at the point in '95 when I did that project, there was no brief that had anything to do with characters. And it actually appears that we got actually the permission to do the project during the summer holiday of '95, and I got together with a Lego designer from Billund, and we sort of tried to pitch out or sort of design the project. And there was one brick that actually was not in the collection, which was the ball joint, and I felt it was, for a quick build and a quick posability that we would love to have, we would need that brick. So I would sort of argue that we did this work around the original ball joint in '95, and this invention, or whatever it could be called, was taken into the development department, and we saw it next time in '99 when Slicer came. So that was like 4 years of doing. Then I went into doing Star Wars. After that experiment, I still had Lego Technic, and then Star Wars was sort of appearing on the horizon. So we were working on Star Wars. I think from '98 or something. I think the premiere was '99 or '98. I can't remember.
I think
the first Star Wars thing. So that was, and we worked a year before that on bringing the concept to life. So there was a lot of knowledge coming in from Star Wars about storytelling and so on. We actually had storytelling in Cybots as well. We did a full story universe that took place underground, where robots would be, they would become sort of their own master and rebel almost against the humans that had sort of sent them into the underground situation. And this was sort of a story universe that really never got sort of further than that, but it in some way it sort of was lying on a shelf somewhere, and of course there was a lot of underground lines coming up later on. So I don't know what the connection was there, but there was definitely, I think, something mysterious about drilling to a sort of going into the deep and this mystery that I think is the source of all good storytelling, that you keep the mystery alive, and it's about exploration and adventure, and not, you should not be aware of stuff happening. You should not be able to guess what was around the next corner. So that was a big learning from that. And then Lego went into Star Wars mode, which really changed the whole picture. So I think there was much more room for talking storytelling when we got to Slicer had a bit of story, and then Robo Riders was sort of a you could say strange attempt to both mix machine with character.
Yeah.
And then we sort of got back to the character and said, okay, now it's the third year of Craze products. Let's take all the learnings we have from all the storytelling of Star Wars and so on, and then combine it with all the great stuff from Slicer. And that became Bionicle.
Actually, it actually leads up to my second question, but because
sorry.
No, that's totally fine. But before Bionicle, I think it was known as Voodoo Heads of Bone Island. And again, like you just said yourself, a lot of the things that came from the Craze products eventually became like core process of Bionicles. But like the question was more like, how do you think Voodoo Island evolved into Bionicles? Because as I read, you were not actually in the start. You're not included in the start of Voodoo Island, but instead you pitched the ideas that, hey, maybe we can do a more story-based idea instead. Because I read that Advance was hired to do the backgrounds for the commercials.
Yeah, it's funny because we were involved constantly. We were not in and out. We were like, we were working directly with the people doing both Slicer and Throwbots, and of course year after we did a lot of Lego Technic in between that, and then we did Robo Riders, and then you almost start talking about what's next. So the thought about being out of it was never there. And I remember, getting to talk about what could the next thing be. I think we talked about getting back into characters because that was so successful. And then the Lego designers went into, they had these building sessions where all the good designers in Billund they went together to do the next concept. And it was really driven by the set designers. And they were also in some way storytellers, but they were just getting into starting to use this storytelling in a new way. So I think we had some inspirational talks because, in the Slicer story, we had this mix of different environments, and actually the island could actually hold some of these different environments. So if you take some of that inspiration into next phase, and then I think there was a building session where they did these voodoo heads that was more like what you call it, native inhabitants of an island, where they were really sort of almost went back in time to sort of ancient sort of civilizations and so on, and they had these really raw looks, and some of them even had fur, the test models and so on, and hair and so on. So they were really sort of these tribes, and that became this voodoo sort of idea about, and the original voodoo logo actually had the island as a skull in there, because I remember this skull island of it's called Hook, he has a skull island, so it's just this iconic thing that something looks like something else, and I really wanted that in there. So I'm thinking, what if it's called Voodoo Heads or something like that, wouldn't it be cool that they were living on an island that had the shape of a face or a skull?
Yeah,
So that would be like iconic logo.
Yeah, but I guess that also evolved into Matanui, the giant robot.
Yeah, but that's exactly, you can't take one of these things and say that's why this and this happened. You can take the whole. It's like a Lego collection of pieces that become a great model. And which one of the pieces should you leave out? This is how the ideas also work, that you collect ideas through a certain amount of time where you work with this, and the stories actually become a building system, where the more bricks you have in your story box, the more cool stories you can build. And if you can combine them in new ways, then people suddenly see, whoa, okay, we hadn't thought about that. So I took a lot of bricks from the Star Wars experience, from the Lego Technic experience, and from my own life, that I would like to put a drama in that was on a different level, that was about life and death almost, because I was up against a story like Star Wars that had the biggest moral questions. It had the father cutting off the hand of the son. It had the it had dark side and the light side, and rebels up against big
good versus evil,
Death Stars and so on. So I needed some kind of really, really big sort of life and death drama in there. So having this gigantic robot resembled something in my own life, having an illness many years before that, but using that experience to sort of say, okay, the cool thing is not about the strength of these robots, it's actually about the weakness of them, and that they are starting from scratch, from zero, and they have to really find their way through this strange story line to become what they were supposed to be. And actually, in the first 8 years, they actually end up failing, because they're not thinking, they're not far ahead. Instead of actually the evil side is further ahead. It's more clever than the heroes.
So that's
sorry for just babbling.
No. As a Bionicle fan, I love it. I'm sure that people also love it as well.
That's perfect.
It actually leads into another question, but just before that, Lego have these 6 principles. I think it's limited in size without setting limitations for imagination, affordability, and then I think it's simple, durable, and rich variations. That's like a classic toy. But how would you describe Bionicle fit into this? Because Bionicle is vastly different, since it uses the Technique pieces and even has a lot of its own pieces that was created for it.
It's actually funny, because when we thought about Bionicle first time, we thought about a really simple building system where you could look at a brick and you would know what it was. You would know that this is a torso, and you know which way to turn it. You would know this is a leg, this is a foot, this is a hand, this is a head. So you almost have a situation where you can tell exactly what the bricks are, or you can make them into what you think they should be from your imagination. And that was really thrilling, to have this building system that was not dependent on a building instruction. So that was one of the things, I think. And actually, the building system, it's much more sturdy than a normal Lego setup. You can actually take a Bionicle character in a simple build and throw it across the room, and it will not destroy. Maybe some of the stuff, decoration will fall off, but you will have the basic structure will be there. And that was why we had this great feeling of this is for role playing. This is for hardcore role playing in the kids' room, maybe also in the classroom or in the schoolyard. And that was one of the biggest sort of barriers, that Lego was fragile. It was something you put on a shelf. It was something you built so your parents could see how good you were, how good you were at sort of following the building instruction. But suddenly this rebel toy came out that was like, you could be thrown around, it could be put in the pocket, it could be put in the school bag, and it would actually survive. And you could switch the masks, with your friends and so on, and have a collection. And it still has, I think, so many positive things about it that it's difficult to sort of put away or just forget, because it has it has so many pluses.
Yeah, that's why I still like it. That's why it still has such a big fandom.
Totally. And
Also,
now all the bricks are rare, you know. They're like they become really sort of almost a currency.
yeah,
So
I
talking
think
about all these,
yeah, Bricklink I think is a pretty good thing where you can order pieces from collectors all over. But actually,
exactly,
I like how you mentioned the torso, because I think my favorite set of the Bionicle of the originals, I think it's Pohatsu Mata, because I really like that you got a brand new like building experience just by switching off the torso.
Fantastic.
So actually, this question is not from me, but I've actually I had an email correspondence with Alistair Swinnerton, I promised to give a greeting from him, and also a question. So
that's perfect.
When the first Bionicle Bible was being written, Swinnerton said that he basically only got like a concept of 4 characters. I think they're called Hook, Claw, Sword, and Axe. And it was only there were no Kopaka or Pohatsu back then. And then he got the inspiration for the Polynesian theme. His question was like, when he sent that the notes back to Bob Thompson, was it only Thompson's own notes that got sent back between Swinnerton, or was like other people like yourself or maybe Martin Riber Andersen who contributed?
I really you know, there's a lot of confusion here, but I've tried also in the other interview and in the book to sort of say who actually was part of this is, I think, a big question. And I must just say, we're working with the advertising agency, which means that we work directly with Billund. And the department called Lego Media was an office in England, and it was hiring writers for coming stories. And Bob Thompson was head of the Lego Media, and we were not involved in that at all. So we were involved with the Billund team making the designs and coming up with new product ideas. So for the first couple of, you know, maybe we got the brief just after summer holiday in '99. I remember actually putting a sort of a 4 or 5 pages concept, really rough concept together, and I dated it November '99, and this was used for giving the idea to the model builders about what kind of story we could tell. And that was the first time the canister was shown drifting ashore. And it was the first time in the background, you had these fingers sticking out, you know, the 3-finger island, which indicate there's a big robot underneath. And you have a drawing of the island with the different areas. And there was only 2 tribes here. There was a North tribe and a South tribe. And it was written, I think it was 1 page where all of the pictures were described with text. And I had that document still. I think actually Alistair asked for that because I remember giving that in a meeting to Martin Riber, and he would bring it to Lego Media, going there, pitching story ideas that would be sort of presented to the different writers, and then the writers could pitch in on which of them they felt was interesting. So we did all that concept work with the model department in Billund, and then this story idea with the canisters and so on was taken to England, where Alistair attached himself to and started to do this Bible. And so there's a lot of confusion about, and we were not part of the same group at all. It was taken out of the collaboration between us and the model builders in Billund, and then it was presented in Lego Media in Slough. So there's no interference there, and I don't know exactly what the process was when it got to Lego Media. I've heard from, and that's why the whole thing is become a bit sort of difficult.
Yeah.
because there was thought about that all the original concept came from Lego Media. but it happened. But that actually happened several months after the original work was done with the model builders. So this information was handed to the story team, and then they worked on with the Bible. And we were, of course, really happy about that they would take it on, because, and the model builders were also like, whoa, okay, they have chosen the stuff we have done to sort of take further. So at that point, it was like fantastic. There's something that can actually carry ideas and become storytelling. And then the whole thing with the Polynesian was sort of taken in by Bob Thompson and Alistair Swindon.
Yeah, so I guess it was maybe only those two that shared the ideas. Unless I think maybe we need to hear that.
Martin Rieber, I'm actually, you know, I don't know what the process was over there. I only know seen from my side and the sketches we did, and then it was, you know, it was pushed into other departments to make sort of the more material and make it become alive as a story.
Yeah.
And of course, taking the Polynesian inspiration, there's a myth about this brother that lands and kills his or sort of puts his twin brother to sleep in the Polynesian world, and that is sort of the good and the bad side of Polynesian mythology. And and when we had a robot lying underneath the sea without knowing that about the Polynesian, you know, then this Makuta suddenly came as the evil brother. But that's actually coming out of the original Polynesian religion almost, and that was why Lego got in some trouble around that point, because some of the names was taken from the language and put into the product.
Yeah, it's actually another question I have, because I know there was just a lot of names were just thrown in there, but I actually have another question relating to the Kanohi Masks, because I think that's like really one of the major you know, things about Bionicle, when you think about it, is all the masks. So like, when did the idea like for the masks spring up? And because before Voodoo Heads has, I think it was detachable heads. So there was something
exactly.
like there.
And I think that's it's a great learning about, you know, having a concept that seems like a good idea in tests, because when you hit the stomach, the head pops off, and it's a great sort of action effect. Actually, I had done Lego Technic competition before that. I don't know if you remember that series where you punch. There's these boxers that punch each other, and then the little guy is thrown out of the vehicle. So a lot of those ideas goes into Voodoo Heads actually. But when they tested out the head coming off, that was totally rejected by the kids. They didn't want their hero or their toy to lose the head. So that was really a big learning. And they came back with this, and I think it was like, I think there's maybe 3 weeks or a month till they had to do the final presentation, and the test totally destroyed the concept. And then, you know, it's like, I'm not saying that I'm totally responsible for that, but taking, you know, ideas from my own sort of the world around me, I was actually playing quite a lot with my little nephew, who was, I think he was maybe around 6 or 7 years old at that time, or 5 years. And he had different masks. He was switching when he was playing, and he was changing character. And he would put a cape on and become Batman, and then we would put a hat on and become another one. And I was just like, you know, why lose the head when you can just lose the face or the mask? And that instantly becomes something where whoa, okay, the mask can actually contain a power, and it could be an artifact that you actually search for. And when you don't have the mask, you are like naked, you are vulnerable, and so on. It had so many things that suddenly just made sense. And I think the Lego designers, I remember that when we presented it, I don't even think we didn't do a drawing and so on. It was just in a meeting where they were in panic. We just had sort of, but we had this thought about making masks instead, because you can, and I think there was like, they didn't even need to hear it. They just ran home.
It just clicked.
And I was just designed the whole thing, and it was totally agreed on, and the kids loved it right away. So so that's really, I think sometimes good ideas are really, really close to bad ideas.
Yeah,
It's just getting to that point where you are ready to get the good ones.
Yeah, you actually mentioned it earlier, because there are things like these craze products, collectathons. There's also like, I remember Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh! All the trading, was it perhaps inspired from that? Because I remember as a kid, I really loved getting those mask packs, because then you could get like new masks and hopefully get a golden one.
This was a golden. This was really one of the big ones. If Lego could get something that was collectible, and we tried it out with Slicer. You know, we had the discs where they had drawings on them, so you could actually put together a storyline by having all the discs. Then there was this strange thing with the RoboWires when you had to collect the wheels, which is like, you know, when you shoot off the wheel, the bike doesn't run, which is really not that fun.
Yeah.
So the idea about shooting the wheel is like, oh dear. But it was a product thing that actually, and then I think when we went all in on Bionicle, we said, okay, the story has this epic feeling. We have all these things. Then the collectible can suddenly become something that has myth in it instead of function. But actually, I think the function was cool because you could actually hit the Toa and the mask would fall off. And then he was ready to be infected by the Krata and so on, which was also part of the
from the Borok line. So
and then I think it's really being able to play with it yourself and you, as you do the concepts, because you're thinking, you know, what would really be cool next? Okay, they're in a fight. He loses the mask and the bad guy runs away with it. Now he's like really sort of weak and he doesn't have the ability. And what would happen next? Some creepy thing would come along the floor trying to, and then you have alien, you know, face huggers and say, suddenly sort of, oh, okay, that could be nice. That would really be creepy, and he would change character and become a zombie or whatever.
But how was that actually allowed? Because I know Lego usually in the start they had no weapons policy, and Bionicle actually have a relatively dark storyline compared to a children's toy. How was that actually? How did this Lego top say okay to this?
I think I just want to switch on a little light because it's getting a bit dark in here. Let's see if I can get. But I'm just saying that luckily we had a good helper, and that was the whole Star Wars experience, because Lego had to really adapt to having the name war inside a logo, which was really like, okay, can we do that as a peaceful toy? Can we have laser shooters and lightsabers and so on? So all this was taken up there, and I think actually the weapons of Bionicle, or the tools as we call them, because they always had sort of a twin. They had sort of a twin function, and they're really sort of. I think they're quite connected to the elements of the characters, which made them a bit more sort of poetic in some way, or epic. It's not like a blaster that just shoots off the head of the. It has another sort of more, more fantastic side to it.
Yeah,
connected to the element. I think so. That's. I think it was not that big a problem with Bionicle. Actually, I think that was much bigger when Star Wars began, because the whole issue about, you know, how is this possible at all to do? There was a campaign where they cut each other in two and so on.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it was the first property that Lego went, you know, where they went together with somebody. So it's like we cannot fail this one, but at the same time we're going up against everything we normally believed in, and we need to sort of find a way around that. So I was involved in that campaign as well, and putting creativity as sort of the big connector between Star Wars and Lego was really the great thing. So actually, I don't know if you remember, but Darth Vader having this sort of, I can feel a disturbance in the force, and it's a creative force. You know, it's what is this new thing they have? You know, where he's holding the brick and so on. This whole thing about having the force of creativity is, I think, what became sort of the training, or the good point of this instead of being death up against life.
Yeah. If we go back to the Moari lawsuit from 2002, like how was it perceived by the story team from Bionicle, and how did the Lego top react? Because I heard they had to pay a lot of money. I mean, I also know we got the renaming ceremony. I think some of the characters had to change names.
Yeah, I think it was actually ended up being quite a few. I think it was the Tohunga, which means priest. That had to be changed, but we were in the, I think we were in the design phase of the boxes and so on, of the packaging and so on. So I think nothing was printed yet. So we actually, no, wait a minute. No, it was on the market.
I think
it came on the market, the first one, and then next time, I
think some of the villagers, I think there was in the US they were released as McDonald's toys, but I think some of them had to Jaller, I think we called Jalla instead or something like that. So I think some of them had to be changed.
I can't really, I'm not quite precise on the exact details of that, because in some way this was such a big success already at that point. So there was in some way a bit of political thing in this as well, I think, from the Moari, because they could attract a lot of attention through this lawsuit with the big toy company. And at the same time, they were running lawsuits up against Robin Williams, who had a tattoo, like a tribal tattoo with the Maui signs on his shoulder. He used that on a cover of his music, and they were up against that. And I remember they had drawings on the carpet of the Australian Airlines planes. They also had the Maui art on that, and that was also a problem because people were treading on their holy symbols and so on.
Oh yeah.
So they had a whole list of things they were up against at that point. But of course, it was a big concern to Lego being up against natural, native people was really, really a bad thing, because what would happen if Lego has done a lot of Indians toys, sort of traditional, and what if suddenly they started to campaign against Lego? That would be a big problem.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially protect the brand value. I have moving on to the next questions. It's more, could you go more into detail with the working process of the Bionicle team? Because I've read that it was pretty revolutionizing, because the Bionicle team could actually throw out a product from idea to the shelves in about 6 months, while the rest of the Lego teams would take about 3 years. And one of the reasons was apparently it's like a spearhead where marketing, story, and production would work together.
We had like a triangle, which is like where every part of this triangle moves sort of in the same. There's no spearhead actually. You turn the spearhead on so it's as a flat. It moves forward. Each of them is just as important, but balances the other two. And I think the basic idea was we were sitting in a story team, and we had these 3 points of the triangle represented by a designer, a storyteller, and a campaign design guy. And I was part of that team for many years. And there was a designer from Billund, and there was many years it was Greg Farstey sitting as the story sort of representative, and we would flesh out the next steps of the story, and then it would be sort of looked at in a sort of a wider audience of people being affected. But many of the stories in the beginning was made like this, and then there was a big break with that, being the Ignition trilogy, which basically was kind of a rebellion from personally from my side, because and that's quite a special story, because Lego got a lot of offers for making a movie around 2005, 4 and 5 and so on, because it was such a popular toy. And there was a script that was actually an attempt to do a film script, and I remember having one weekend to read that script and give comments before it would be sent to the film companies. And I was like reading that, I was like, oh no, this is so not good. And having to come back, not just saying we can't use it, I needed to come back and say, we can't use this because this and this and this, and we need to do this instead. So actually, during that weekend, fleshing out the trilogy of the Ignition, saying that the Toa, the heroes, need to be adventurous. They need to be on a journey. We can't make them into leaders of army, leaders of hordes that has to sort of fight each other, which actually that story that was pitched, it was like Lord of the Rings with Helm's Deep, just robotic armies going up against each other, and was like, no. I didn't even know how to get that story told, because we couldn't do the pictures. We wouldn't have enough 3D money to do that.
Yeah, was that
Sorry?
Oh yeah, I was just wondering, was that movie the one that eventually became the Mask of Light, or?
No. The Mask of Light is
because it's earlier, right? It's from like 2003. Yeah. So
yeah, that was basically, that was really the original story, but a side story to that, not telling the small guys story, looking at the heroes, finding the heroes, and
getting the seventh hero.
Yeah. So that, but it's actually, it's always been a marketing thing up against the story thing, and we needed to have all the heroes represented in the story at the same level, so all toys would be sold equally. And having so many characters being on the same level in the story is really, really hard to make it interesting. And it's hard to make all those twists that you need and make something really sort of if you have all these characters that constantly have to come in there and get their time on the screen. so you can see that in all the movies, you have almost equal time on each of the heroes, which is like,
yeah.
And we were fighting all the time to get like, can we tell just one of them story, and that had the other ones as sort of second characters and so on, but that never became part, and that was why we never had the cinema movie, because basically all the films that are made are marketing films.
Yeah, for sell the products.
I don't know if I'm allowed to, but so many years after, that's the reason why. We could have had the biggest movie blast if we had been allowed to do the right story, but we were only allowed to do marketing.
Yeah, I mean, you see I think it's the Lego movie, and even all the movies afterwards. I think there's an Ninjago movie and Batman. They just go out there. So
one hero.
Yeah.
One hero. Look at that.
Yeah.
They're not trying to tell 6 different stories in the same movie. That's you're not gonna get a good movie if you have 6 equal heroes.
I mean, I guess that's why maybe the Mask of Life worked better, because it was more like a journey with 2 characters.
Yeah, and that was also, I think that was a piece from the heart. I think it was really something where, creative cavers wanted to tell a good story, and they were like, there was a lot of effort put into the art direction and so on, getting that right feel, and there was good collaboration between Billund and the film company. But later on, that became more like a fight.
Yeah,
and I was in the middle of that fight for some years, which was not really funny.
Oh, I can imagine. I read I think it was Bob Thompson. I think he was the leader of more the
Bob Thompson.
Yes.
Bob Thompson.
Bob Thompson. Yeah, I think he because the story of Bionicle was more like split up in episodic pieces. Like, what was the reason for that? Because as you mentioned, I think the first one we had like a Flash game. And there was the comic, and there's all the stories by Greg Farshley, and all the directed movie videos we had. So like, what was the reason?
Yeah, but this is an impossible thing that actually came to be. It's like a film without a film. We made the first campaign as if we had a movie. So we did a movie poster. We did keyframes from the film that was not existing. So we played it off. We put it on the screen as if it was a film, and we did small sequences in 3D that looked like they were cut out of the film or done like a hero sequence from the film. The film wasn't there, which meant that we had the Matanui online game breaking new ground on online. We had the comic books, So instead of getting this big movie, we approached, or Lego got all these cool deals with Scholastic and with Nike and with Toothbrush and with McDonald's and with DC Comics. It was like attacking the market from so many different angles that's why this marketing story is still really different than a lot of other things. And I still long for this cinematic thing that really goes all the way and that actually lives up to what the original idea was about having this really cinematic, robotic, epic film. And I still haven't seen the epic start scene, which is the first thing I depicted in my head that hasn't been made yet. So I'm still trying to get to a place where I can make that right, and that's why I have been active in the fan community for this with so many different things through the years. I think there's so much energy still in there that's not been released.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really appreciated from the fans as well. I think this is more like a question where we're going to the Lego's financial crisis, because in 2003 they really got like a wake-up call, because I think I read it Brick by Brick, it was about 90% or something of like the products that was lost on. I think it was basically only Bionicle and the licensed sets, but the problem with the licensed sets was, of course, you have to pay a lot of royalties. And so I think Jørgen V. Knudstrup, he basically took a lot of internal things going, like he basically said, like, I think it was, guys, we need to use the Bionicle model, the one you just explained. And I think that became like a standard for Lego. And then he said, I think it's called the shared vision, because I think they had to basically rebuild the company from the inside. And again, I think the real questions come here. Sorry for me rambling, but I think it's called the CPP model, which is the consumer product profitability, and the FMC model, which is the full manufacturer cost. Because before, I think it's with the creative products you mentioned earlier, it was pretty much the Wild West. But now they were like, you basically you had to work inside the box now with the innovation, because you had limits on how much you could do. Like, did that change the Bionicle team's like workload, or did you just continue like you used?
I think we were pretty used to surviving in different environments with the Bionicle team. So we knew that we were in some way rebellious, and we stuck together, this whole team, and that's why Bionicle has always, I think, seen a bit like the black sheep in the Lego family, because I think there's a really distinction between being inside that team, where you really felt like you were doing something, you were changing stuff, and then if you were outside the team, you would look at it as, oh no, I don't want to hear another word about Bionicle, because Lego, and then Bionicle, and it's like, stop, I can't wait for it to die almost. So that's really, and that's why also the second generation was not well placed, because it actually got the same sort of another time Bionicle. It was not ready for a second round. And I think we, the whole thing about, we actually showed that by doing original stuff inside Lego, doing the storytelling, so it connected with the toy. So we played upon your flexibility and your modularity. We played on what the toy could do, and you were not afraid of your own brand, almost trying to sort of hide it away. I think that was what Bionicle showed, and that was carried straight into Ninjago, having this sort of imaginative way of using the bricks in a new way and showing effects and all that, storytelling happiness that is so cool when we're not doubting yourself all the time. And I think that was what Lego reinstalled in Billund.
Yeah, it was really. Yeah.
After many years of trying to do everything and trying to copy what everybody else was doing, then they actually found back to the brick. So I think that was what Bionicle did, being in the right place at the right time with the right sort of inspiration.
Yeah, because you, like you said, you really, I'm not really been into what's it called Ninjago myself, but you can really see a lot of like parallels between them, like all the elementals and stuff like that. So really feel like
Even the
that's like,
posters with the big face in the top
yeah,
and then the character range in the bottom. Remember when we saw that first one, it was like, okay, yeah, that works, because you
yeah,
have the distance ID, and then you have when you go closer, you have the different models. So that was so cool to see that continued.
yeah. This also leads on to my one of the last questions I have. Because besides because Bionicle really had like an internal effect on Lego, besides the evolution of how to make products, but also the working models. What do you think like Bionicle's legacy have been inside Lego?
I think it sort of showed that ideas could come from something totally unexpected, and that when my biggest thing that has been a life-changing thing, I think the stuff we did where we actually convinced people inside Lego that this could be something special, that was the biggest move ever, because we reinstalled confidence. And I remember being, we had this selling in video, which was the first one ever done in the Lego company, where you had the product on a video that you could put in the machine, you could draw the blinds, and then 3 minutes later, people would be seeing like, whoa, okay, this is gonna be crazy. And I think after that, these selling in videos was done all the time, and it almost became crazy how much money was put into it. But I think the first time it came out, people were just like, whoa, we can actually tell stories. I remember people sitting, can we actually do this? Don't we need somebody else to be part of this? No, let's just tell stories ourselves. We can do it. But but they were used to having Lucas tell them everything and so on, and suddenly they were doing it themselves. So that confidence, I think, is game changing, because just look at the Lego Movie and what they've done afterwards. It's like it was just a rocket taking off.
Yeah. This is actually my second to last question. What do you think the Bionicle legacy has been through the fans? Because as we talked earlier, Bionicle still has a pretty big fandom. Well, we've talked about the Cranny Creations Bionicle game, which is just one example of what the fans come up with, even though Bionicle has been canceled for about 10 years now.
Yeah, but I think there's so many things that was right in Bionicle, that actually just clicked in the right way. So I don't think the best thing has come out yet. I think there's so much lying waiting to be released, because and I think actually people know it. People who have been playing with it know that there's something energy, and it's actually all about these living machines, and the morale of being the machine that has to learn to sort of be a hero, or be sort of a bad guy or a good guy, and for what reasons. The whole thing, it becoming more and more relevant, because we're getting AI machines. We're walking around with a phone in our hand that knows more about us than ourselves. So these things about what are machines learning, and how do we handle this new technology? I think Bionicle can play a big role in teaching that, and playing with new dimensions and within sort of that kind of storytelling. I think something is going to happen that I can't really predict it, but there's so much energy stored there, and it's so different than a lot of other things that's out there. So I think I think it would have become something else if it hadn't been sort of a Lego property lying dormant. And because Lego has so much success on all accounts, then it's I think the success of Bionicle, the company would have been happy just having that by itself. And Lego is sort of measuring up against something that's crazy popular, and then Bionicle is sort of it's only okay popular, so let's cancel it. It's like, okay, they have so much to choose from that they are throwing out Messi from the team.
I think Bionicle was actually supposed to be like a 20-year line, if that's correct. Something
but
like that.
If you have a good IP, you know, it can almost live on its own, and it doesn't matter that it's dormant for a while. It's like saying, you know, Harry Potter is not going to go away. It's going to be part of a generation that grows up, and it's going to change, you know, the way people use it. They will talk to their kids, people who have grown up with Harry Potter. They will use that as an example of good upbringing and so on. And I think also now I can see people talking about, I want to give my Bionicle to the kids that I sort of see growing up, because I want to give the same creativity to them. And I think that can become something that's interesting, hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, we can. I know the fans at least are craving a Generation 3 sometime. So, okay, this is the last question. This is more like a personal, but what's your favorite Bionicle set? Because I saw you did a TED talk here at SDU, and I saw you had the Cybots still.
Yeah, but you know, I think it was the first one we got, actually. You know, it was definitely the first mask I saw, and it was designed by Christopher Roundale, who's one of my oldest colleague from the design team, who's done some of the greatest models, and his initials are inside the mask, actually. And so I think I must say this is such an iconic, and it draws on so many design things that I think is cool. It has the organic soft shape, it has the mystery, it has the gills, which also I love. You know, it has some animalistic feel to it at the same time, and it has this strange round mouthpiece, which is almost like Star Wars Darth Vader, but in a round shape, which is like what and it looks like something that could be designed by an artist in some way, and at the same time it has this coolness to it. Yeah, it's
I mean, it was also used.
I can't help but saying that.
Yeah, I think it's called the How. I think it was also used as the poster for like the first Bionicle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can imagine.
And the whole idea about having it in sort of an infected version, and in a clean version, and in a sort of powered version by changed color, depending on what abilities it has. All those things were sort of thought out with the How as the basic.
Yeah.
So
I think wasn't it also before Makuta got a set? I think also they used like an evil How again to show it.
The anti-hero. Yeah. Actually, I also, you know, I have to say I love the Mask of Life, because I was deeply involved in the design, and that's actually the only brick or the only piece of plastic I can take the direct credit for. So that's also really close to my heart, also because it has the giant robot in the design, which is, of course, it almost sort of showed the secret before the secret came out, but in sort of a cover-up way. So the face, the face is on the face, you know.
Yeah, I think it's also one of the more craved masks now. But But I really just want to say, like, thank you so much for taking your time to do this interview. I think it's really gonna let me dig deeper with my paper.
That's perfect. And good luck with your paper. And it's also a thrill. It's always a thrill to talk to people who are enthusiastic about all this creativity that came out. And I think, I think this is there's so much potential in it that stuff like this keeps it alive and will bring it to the next phase. And I think people still deserve trying to be a real hero, or trying to step into the Bionicle world in a totally sort of immersive way. So that's what I'm seeing in the future, but let's see.
Yeah, thanks again.